Alrighty then, let's do it. Good morning. Hi everybody, I'm Abby Hagyard, and I'm just going to click on this thing over here, as I am wont to do, to make sure I welcome you in print. Okay, so sometimes it amazes me that I think of a theme, and then all of a sudden it's all happening around me. Now that there's a term for that. It's like when you decide you're going to buy a red car and suddenly every third car is a red car. It's the technical term is cognitive dissonance. And what it means is that when you're thinking of a thing, suddenly you see it where it has always been. It's just that you weren't looking before, right? So the theme today is what happens when the worst happens. And we have all, I think, if we've had access to some kind of viewing apparatus, we've all been watching very closely what is happening in Florida. I guess it's pretty much moved off the coast, but that doesn't mean that the after effects aren't still happening. And it doesn't mean that people are now not digging out and looking out of windows and climbing up out of things and climbing down out of trees to find out exactly what happened when their eyes were squinched shut. Because a hurricane, bigger than one we've known in our lifetime, certainly, just sailed smack dab into Florida and dragged a whole bunch of water with it. And it either dragged it behind it, in front of it, or from above. The only place it didn't come from was below. And everyone was talking about it who had a focus on someone they know there, someplace they've lived there, someplace they're thinking of living there, someplace they're no longer thinking of living there. And it impacts a lot of people. It impacts a lot of things from Canada, where I am. There were tons of linemen, trucks, equipment, supplies, volunteering, lined up, crossing the border, all over Canada, all over the northern states, heading south, because when something happens up here, everybody comes. We had so much help in Ottawa in 1998 when we had an ice storm. We had people coming in from everywhere because that's what we do, right? That is what we do. And the conversation that those people, those logistics people are having when they're all watching the weather and they're all looking at what can be a ripple effect of mammoth proportions, the planning they're making, the conversations they're having about the worst is strategic. Of course, life, limb, loved ones, of course. That's not the job. The job is to figure out how to get in, get it fixed, get it done as quickly and efficiently as possible. That's the job. That's what they signed on for. That's what the people in the logistics room are looking at, how they're going to be able to, get vehicles down there, get them staged, have fuel for them, all the gas stations, all of the owners of the fuel companies knowing a storm of that size was coming, and they had not stockpiled fuel. And gas stations for all the people who were trying to evacuate had run out of fuel. How was that possible? How is that not a strategic plan? Why doesn't that happen? And that's a question that everybody yells about later. What is so important is the preemptive strike, is knowing that during a particular season, there tend to be more storms than others in a particular time when ocean waters are warmer and we are seeing heavier storms. Somebody logistically that's their job. How do we get ourselves there before it's a problem, where to start and how to start before it starts is one side of what happens when the worst happens. Are we ready? Did we bring enough stuff? Did we get there early enough? Can we get out? How, if, I mean, we may be able to get in, how do we get out? What happens to the vehicles that brought us? Are they safe? Where did we park them? Where did we tie them down? And there's so much that has to be taken into consideration. All of the news media, they send in their people. Where are they housed? How did they get in? How will they get out? All of these things are the big logistics that I have to tell you, they do something very positive. And what they do is they keep us focused on what is real and what we can do. Because the thoughts and prayers are so well intentioned, and they do set up a positive ripple effect. But a thought and a prayer are part of this thing I talk about when I say, curiously, hope and fear are two sides of the same coin. Hope is on one side, fear is on the other. You know how I know? Because when people are scared, they're praying while they're running. So they got both oars in the water and they're working on both sides of the conversation. Help, 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 help. Because if you had no hope, would you be running? If you had no fear, would you be praying? Right? It's a very connected thing. The thing is their emotions. The thing is they're basic, primitive, fear-based survival feelings and knee-jerk reactions. They're not thought-based. They're not strategic. They're not well planned. So a great friend of mine who's down in Florida has a storm shelter. Why? Well, because Florida has storms, and his family, they have animals and they have kids and they have things they care about on top of family and kids and pets. They have things that they cherish. So they created a storm shelter. He was broadcasting from the storm shelter last night because, sure enough, Milton was all around him. Why did he plan like that? Because he lives by the rule of fool me once. You know what? Okay, fool me twice, not a third time. And so it was comforting to hear from him, because he had a battery pack, he had this, he had that. He said, I might lose Wi-Fi. If I do, I'll be back. It's dark, it's wet. And he had taken his family to safety, and then he went back so that he could keep his home safe. Everything he thought of as home, that's his job. So he had planned ahead for that. And do we all? No. Why not? We don't think of it. We're caught up in other things. We're not that strategic. So that's why these conversations, I think, are so important. Because if we spend all our time in advance worrying, and if all around us we are worrying, we're using up our valuable energy. We're using up our valuable positivity. Worry kind of freezes us in place. And it's tempting because it's a stalling tactic. We don't want to think about how horrible it could be. And in the aftermath, we're exhausted from the fear, from the worry, from the desperate hope, from the desperate fear that we're not going to make it. We feel so helpless. And it's a terrifying thing. One of the things that you and I are talking about all the time these days is what it's been like since the pandemic. People kind of got frozen, and they haven't figured out how to thaw. They haven't figured out how to figure out, now then, where was I? We need to do a whole episode on now then, where was I? Allow me to make a note of that. Now then, where was I? Because I want to say something to you that's going to make you go, oh. So every worst thing stops. Every worst thing. It's this big. It's this big, but it's this big. It's that big in terms of time. It's cataclysmic. It's horrific. Yeah. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And now then, where were we? I realized, when I was working with a client last night, and at one point we both said, I wonder how Florida's doing. And I said, I know, right? Let's give it a moment. And we just gave it a moment to think about Florida, to think about the people. I spent a lot of time in Florida when I was a kid. I went to college in Florida. I had my first serious boyfriend in Florida. I lived in a really sweet little house in Florida. I had a couple of crazy jobs in Florida. I don't even want to think about those things yesterday. I thought about them the day before. But those memories aren't going to change. Where I was and how I was and what I was aren't going to change because they're all in here. And this is part of what we need to do for ourselves and for our loved ones. We need to remember that we have the ability to create our own storm shelter in here and in here and this way. We can. I mean, one of the reasons my great friend was broadcasting. He works in the business. When you're broadcasting, you're talking to people. They can see you. They can hear you. You get the comments, so you're not alone, right? You're building this connection, and on the end, when you're the one building it, you're trying to think of great things to say to keep the conversation going, because the longer you do, the more you're part of this bigger tribe. And him taking action like that wasn't hope, and it wasn't fear. It was a deliberate act of connection to talk about other stuff, talk about the storm. Sure, okay, every time I go from here to there, my feet get wet. We're not flooded in here. This is from when I'm walking. My shoes are a mess because I have the dogs over here, and I have the ducks over here, and I have the cats in the house, and I'm checking on everybody. And by the way, I wanted to show you this, and by the way, I wanted to show you that. He was normalizing his conversation, not only with us, but with himself. He was making it real and making it normal, not helpless and unreal, so that he didn't feel frozen. He didn't feel trapped. He didn't feel helpless. He felt like he was working it. I'm here. I leaned in. I drove the family to safety. I drove back. I made sure everything's in place. I'm here. I'm not crazy tethering myself to a flagpole. I'm here where it's safe with my furry family. And then he was talking to us, his online family. Not because he's the greatest savior of all time. No, he's staying in touch, because it is our connectedness that makes us strong, right? So one of the things that I know, that's kind of interesting. I'm not getting any messages at all. Well, I hope everybody's okay. One of the things that I know about this business of now what is that we didn't plan. And I had a long conversation many, many years ago when I was just starting with a client who had a real strong attachment to a lot of the Disney conversations about the way life is. You marry the handsome prince, you marry the prince and hints, and you live happily ever after. And I said, after what? And she said, what do you mean? I said, after what? Lunch? After the reception? After the honeymoon? After the dress fit? Because the 7 pounds lost by Friday actually worked? And she said, no, just forever. And I said, okay, but you said happily ever after. What is the point you're calling before? Where is the line drawn that is the after? What is this benchmark you've set that my life will never be the same from this moment? What is it? And she hadn't ever thought about it because, of course, when you're a little kid in Disney and it's happily ever after, you don't really pay attention to what you're saying. You're just singing the lyrics. And I said, this is a thing we need to talk about, because I was working with my client last night while people were hunkering down, while first responders were waiting it out, while families were watching tornadoes touch down. And I was safe, and my client was safe. And lots of people across the rest of the world were safe. Lots of people across other parts of the world weren't safe. There's a nasty storm on its way to Europe. There's another nasty storm apparently coming toward the Caribbean again. There's probably something in the east. Everybody has got a worst moment at different times. And I think for our calming, for our remembering to breathe, is that the worst is a very confined event. It could be hundreds of miles wide and high and deep and wet and scary and cold or hot and windy. It can be all those things, but it comes in a very, very limited period of time. And I'm not suggesting that we hold our breath and wait for the after, the happily ever after. What I'm suggesting is that it is a moment of extreme blowing off steam, frustration, yelling, lying face down on the kitchen floor because the tiles are cool, hugging somebody who's just exhausted and crying like a 5-year-old. These moments are very limited. They have a short lifespan. What has a long lifespan is all dependent on us. And these elements that have, good morning, Vern, how are you? Were you watching any the events last night? My goodness. So many times we don't realize that we are fueling the fear. We are fueling the frozenness. We are fueling the frustration because we are focusing on the wrong part of it. We're focusing on the helpless part of it. We're focusing on the why didn't somebody, why didn't I? Instead of saying, what can I do right now? A day before, a week before. What can I do right now? The storm is going to come. If not this storm, some storm. What can I do right now? If I'm not hit, somebody will be. What can I do right now? And if nothing is needed from me, that's okay. It was a rehearsal. You don't get a great show without a rehearsal, or 2, or 42. So this fixation on the devastation is important by the media because people are not paying attention as they used to. And even when they used to, they're not paying attention because it's a thing over there and I'm here. And we have to get people's attention and say, this is serious. If you can't stay, you need to go. You can't wait and see how it, well, I'll see how it looks and I'll see how the traffic. I was getting messages from someone who said I should have left yesterday. We're bumper to bumper. I have a full tank, but what if it runs out? It's a parking lot moving along at a snail's pace. Imagine all the electric cars. Where are you going to charge them? If all the gas stations had already run out of fuel and we couldn't get the trucks down with more fuel, why didn't that happen sooner? Doesn't matter why it didn't happen sooner this time. It matters in the aftermath to say, let's figure out how we fix that. People complaining that the emergency measures are not doing enough. Emergency measures had never seen anything this big. was never seen. They were reaching a point where they were thinking of inventing a new category for this hurricane. Do you realize how bad that is? So what we saw yesterday was a full kaleidoscope of human endeavor. Every possible attitude, mindset you could think of, we saw it. We saw it in action. We saw it in inaction. We saw it in reaching out to people. I was watching a news clip of them building an aqua fence around a hospital because there were too many people to move who were too frail. And all the backup generators and all of this and all of that and all the precautions don't take away from the fact that the first 3 floors of that building are probably compromised within an hour, if in fact the storm is that bad. And if I'm working that shift, where's my family? All of those things that are so small and so human and are so distracting if we are focused on fear or hope, when we need to be focused on this step, followed by this step, followed by this step. The interesting thing about walking is you can only be in the middle of 3 steps at any given time. You're always only in the middle of 3 steps. You've got the one coming, you've got the one leaving, and you've got the one on its way out. And at one point, both feet are on the ground. And at one point, both feet are off the ground. And if we just keep the momentum, we keep moving forward. Focusing on that. I have a list of things to do. I'm going to keep focusing on the momentum. On Tuesday evening, we had a lovely get-together of a group of us. We've been getting together for 20 years. And it's a wonderful group. We bumped into them back in 2002, and we were all of a similar age, and we were all single, and we were all having zero luck meeting anybody who shouldn't in some way be enclosed somewhere. And so we decided that we would get together every week and compare notes. How'd it go? Don't ask. Okay, then. What's on the next? I don't know. I'm thinking I'm going to just rent a cave and give up. No, don't give up. No. And so we were cheerleading each other through a very awkward, weird time. And it was great. It was really fun. We called ourselves Delta Club because Delta means change. And then gradually, the same 6 people to get together the same night every week. Somebody says, "What's going on?" And so, "Oh, well, can I join?" Absolutely. Yeah, I got no luck either. And so gradually the group built, and it would ebb and flow, and people are leaving and coming. Anyway, this Tuesday we got together because one of us had returned from Europe for a visit. I'm going to say 70% of it just pure joy, and 30% of it deeply personal compassion and care, joy. She has a family member whose partner is not well, and she said, "I just felt I needed to be there for my family member." And so we were talking about that, and I said, in recent times for me, I've realized the incredible value of momentum. And I don't mean screaming, running down a hill. I mean just the one foot in front of the other. It's so helpful because it gives you a focus, and it gives you a pattern. It gives you a set of steps that are familiar, because if I just did that 3, then I'm doing this 3, and the next 3 are coming. So it's predictable, and it's very ordinary. And that is very comforting in a time when nothing else is ordinary and nothing else is normal or familiar. And I said, and the other thing that is so important is that we are involved. We are actively coping, doing, being. And I said, I think the most serious mistake people make when we know someone we care about who's struggling is saying, no, don't do a thing. I'll take care of it. You don't want people with nothing to do. They feel helpless to begin with. They feel that they can't fix something that they would move heaven and earth to fix, and they can't. And so they feel helpless. Don't then render them helpless by saying, just sit there. We need to give people Small essential tasks, not silly tasks. People know it's silly. Small essential tasks that keep their minds active and focused on the task, not the spinning off into the worry, not the spinning off into anxiety and loss, preemptive loss. Oh my God, how will I? There'll be time enough for that. Where you want to focus is on how I am coping, how I am living in this moment, this very finite moment, how I am doing, how I am being. Because we don't have to do more or be more. We already are all the more. And we need to honor that at all times. You know, when my friend was saying, I'm driving the family out and I'm coming back, and I'm saying, couldn't you take the animals with you? He said, you know, I built the shelter so that I could stand my ground safely. And I want to make that happen. I want that to be what I'm doing. And he said, and believe me, if I think it's dangerous, you know, I would not do I wouldn't put anybody at risk. So we have to honor people's need to be of the moment. We have to honor people's commitment to the life they've built. We also have to say, they're calling for a storm surge of 10 feet. You're living in a bungalow. Your bungalow isn't 12 feet. You have to get out, unless your bungalow floats. And even then. And one of the newscasters said something that I hadn't heard anybody say before. Here's what they said. In a storm surge of 6 feet, cars float. Okay. Vehicles float. The fluids that are in the vehicles leak out. Okay. In a storm surge of 10 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet, you can't see the vehicles that are untethered. And however fast the current is coming in, however fast that high tide is surging, they call it a surge for a reason. It's not a gentle lapping at the shore. A wall of water coming at a high rate of speed with vehicles hidden in it would be like treading water and getting hit by a submarine. People don't think about that. When that newscaster said that, I thought, there's an image that should have been animated. There's a thing people don't wrap their heads around. It's not just the water. I'm a good swimmer. Okay. Well, what happens if you're hit by a Buick? A submerged Buick. You're treading water and a tree falls on you. Trees float. Okay. Do you if it hit you on the head? These are things that people don't think about. Why not? It's too big and it's too crazy and it's too surreal to think about. However, those images, rather than saying it's the worst storm the worst storm is a phrase after you say it 6 times, people delete it because there's nothing tangible about that. There's nothing they can quantify it. There's nothing they can equate to the last time they saw something devastating happen. They don't have that memory, so they can't connect it to anything. There's nothing to make sense of, right? And these are, I mean, certainly people on television are filling the airtime, right? Excuse me, speaking of filling. What we don't have, what we don't plan to do, haven't ever had to, is have safety conversations. You know, if you live in an apartment building, they test the fire alarms on a regular basis. If you go to school, They have fire alarms. Now, tragically, they also have shelter-in-place alarms in case of a danger. We don't do that in the community. There was a period of time during the Cold War when they had air raid. This is just a test, where to go in the event of, because in those days, it was difficult for people to understand how fast a missile could come from someplace. So in the event of something, instead of worrying and instead of being afraid and instead of being frozen in place, have a small bag packed and know where you're going and practice so we don't forget. So we're not in the way, we're actually helping. So this conversation in the mostly aftermath, because it's still thonking its way up the coast, it's still on the edge. That particular storm caught our attention. The shock of it coming so quickly on the heels of the previous one, which also caught our attention, kind of numbed people. I don't know, I got nothing left. I can't afford, we didn't plan for something this big. Nope. No, we didn't. What happens if? We need to have people working in the Department of Unintended Outcomes. And what they do is pursue potential what ifs and see how many we can try and prepare for, in order that it's not billions of dollars in cleanup. You're going to spend the money early or you're going to spend the money late, but you're going to spend the money. Why? There are places now in areas where houses and shops and high rises were built against the advice of people saying it's a risky spot. Oh, we'll be fine. Okay. So err on the side of caution. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't enough. That's not the problem. The problem now is there an insurance company that will have the resources to pay out the premiums? Will they insure you again? Natural causes, some of them don't cover that. And if they do, how can they cover and repay the vast expenses of so many people? The math is very, very difficult to calculate. So what happens when the worst happens, I think, is three things. I think one of the things is, I should have thought of that sooner. All right, write it down. Why? It's too late now. It's not too late for the next one. You're saying there's going to be another. There will always be a thing of some kind that is unexpected and unpleasant, just as there will always be things that are unexpected and delightful. Now you've seen why it helps to plan ahead. Lesson learned, hopefully. That's one of the now what happens when the worst happens. The second is, what do we do next? We come out of wherever we were hiding, like our timid little creatures. We come out of wherever we were hiding. And everything we were going to do today is no longer the thing we're going to do today. Now what? What are we going to do today? We need a new priority list. That might be one of the things we do in prep for the next time. What is the first thing we need to do? Is there a list of 5 first things? Maybe we need to make that list. If we are together with our family, with our group, maybe we assign each person one of those things on the list. And we stay collected and we stay connected and we ask how it's going and we work together with each other like a team to make sure everything gets done. And the third thing, so the first one is before, for next time. The second one is how do we manage the logistics right now? And the third one is how do we regain our positivity? How do we regain the positive energy, the positive intention, the clear-eyed focus and purpose that is our normal? How do we get back to that place? And with everything that we talk about, all the time we talk about it, those solutions, how do we reset back to us, are incredibly simple. If you're with someone, if you're alone, and you make that list of what we are going to do, what I'm going to do, top of the list, because it only takes 30 seconds, is the 5-finger breathing exercise. Abby, don't be ridiculous. We've got this and this and this. It's not ridiculous. And I'll tell you why it's not ridiculous. We need to pull our creative, purposeful, calm, wise brain into a place that is fueled by positivity, by good feelings, by good energy. And the way we connect this brain and this brain and that brain is by disconnecting from the swirl. If you hold your breath for a while, you get dizzy. That's part of the swirl. If you're panicked because you can't find things because you forgot things, that's part of the swirl. If you can't reach somebody and you thought you would be able to, that's part of the swirl. You can't move forward. You can't cope. You can't affect recovery if you're in the swirl. The 5-finger breathing exercise, doesn't matter which hand you start with. You have your hands like this. I'm picking my left hand. You put your index finger here, and all you do, breathe normally and trace each finger and focus on the physical sensation that creates. The sensation of your index finger gently tracing the shape of your 5 fingers. And when you finish this hand, you do the other hand. And when you're watching what you're doing and paying attention to the sensation, it's very, very soft. It's very soothing. You can think of it sometimes a lot like when you're petting a small animal or a big animal. It's very, very relaxing. When you're done, now you pick up your list because you have brought it all back down to normal. Your breathing is better. That sensation still leaves a tingling that's very pleasant. Now you can say, all right, I'm in charge. You pick up the list. You may look at the list and say, oh, I wish somebody was else in charge with me or for me. But now you have connected this brain, the cause and effect brain, this brain, the thinking brain, this brain, the emotional survival brain. All three are now focused on what are the steps. And if you have made a plan that the first thing I need to do is to ground myself, done. The second thing I need to do is look at my marching orders, doing. And the third thing I need to do is make sure I start with the one that feels the most urgent. Take a slow, deep breath. Say, all right, whatever it is, you have to change your socks, you have to roll up your sleeves, you have to put on a raincoat, whatever it is you have to do, you do the one task. When you've done the task to the best of your ability, you need to take a very short break for a couple of reasons. One, of course, is physical. You need to breathe. You need to, it's like if you're old enough to remember what it was like to drive a standard transmission car. The car has different gears. It has park, it has reverse, it has first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear. And in between, those gears are all wheels that are different sizes, and they all have teeth. In order to move out of first, you have to disengage the wheels. Otherwise, you have to disengage the wheels. The way you do that is you shift out of this gear into neutral for a second. So that spins away and this spins free, and then you can shift into this gear. We need to do that for ourselves. We need to go into neutral in order to go into the next gear, the next step, the next solution, the next angle, the next focus. Doesn't take long, 30 seconds. I don't have time. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So you finish a task, you say 30 seconds, come back, look at it, check it off, take a moment, close your eyes. Okay, make any notes that you need to make, and then look at the next one. Ready? Okay, let's do this. Am I thirsty? Do this. Is it safe? Okay. And we take care of the things we can take care of. Check the batteries, check that everybody's okay, check that I'm okay the next thing I do. One step at a time. The temptation to try and do everything is a panic, and it doesn't make any sense, because you can't bake a cake while you're juggling flaming chainsaws. It's going to get real messy, and nobody's going to like either outcome. So what happens when the worst happens depends on how we approached the worst. What we chose to do in our approach, what our plan was. One of the most difficult, upsetting things for people who choose careers as first responders, frontline people, is that they chose those careers because they feel a passion and a need to rescue. One of the most difficult things to accept is that we can't rescue everyone. A friend of mine who's a firefighter reminds me often that every time they go out on a call, their chief says, all right, before you go, remember everybody, we didn't start the fire. We are here to help. And we were going to do the best job we can. And if we can't help everyone, it needed more people. It needed more resources. It isn't our failure. Because if we decide to take ourselves to our failure, we are now in the past. We are not in the present, looking at the next item on the list. We have walked away, or we have walked ahead, but we're not here. Sometimes that feels safe. The thing is that it doesn't help us, doesn't help them, doesn't help anyone. Being here now to the best of our ability and giving ourselves permission to rest. Remembering that the worst is a very limited event. It's a very small, limited event. The size and scope within that limited event can be cataclysmic. But in 2 days, the sun will be shining in Florida. I remember once having the great good fortune to meet naturalist David Suzuki. He was in Ottawa. I was doing morning drive radio. He was in Ottawa to talk about a new program and a new book he was working on. And so he was making the rounds of all the radio stations, and he came to us. And I said, I used the term natural disaster. And he put up a hand and he said, I need to remind everyone that it is only a disaster to people. Humans are the only ones who rate an event as a disaster, because they're looking at the event from their own personal point of view, with all of their attachments and all of their expectations and all of their passions and their investments in an outcome that they suddenly have no influence on. I bought a house, yeah, it's my forever home. Where is it? Sarasota? I see. Possibly forever was the wrong word. Because the devastation is not merely the loss of a property, it's a loss of a belief in something called forever, which is equated to safety and happy and sanctuary and compassion and caring and love. And we weight those words with feelings that are very easily damaged if we stay focused. I bought the home I've always wanted is a different way of saying it's my forever home. Because things change. You could go, you could be in the place, some awful thing could happen, and you could say, I don't want to live here anymore. My reality and my purpose and my vision and my focus have changed. This is no longer the best place. It was. It had its moment. So for us all today, we all know someone who knows someone. We all know someone who has vacationed somewhere near the devastation area. We all know someone who would say, oh my gosh, there's nothing left on that street. Yes, there is. The land is there. And the seeds are still in the ground. And the soil is there. And the water is there. And the fresh water is still coming out of the ground. And the wind is blowing. And the birds are coming back. And I sound like a nature show, but the birds will eat the seeds, and the seeds that they get rid of will drop on the ground, and plants will grow. And in a year, there will be remnants, but there will also be many millions and billions of new beginnings, because as Suzuki said, it's not a disaster. It's nature. Every forest fire clears the land for new growth. Every devastating forest fire, the remnants of the fire put nutrients back in the soil. Every farm that you have to abandon because there's a drought or there's a flood, it allows the soil time to not be worked and depleted. It's like we're all little kids, and right after we have an ice cream, we want another one. And when there aren't any more ice creams and we still want one, that's a disaster. So if you know someone, they may not be able to reach you right now. That doesn't mean they can't reach you. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. It means that they may be a little busy this morning. Think of all the things you love about them. Just think of all the things that are amazing about them. Don't focus on, oh my God, but think of all of the great stuff. Those are the thoughts we need to be sending. Positivity, love, memories, waves of, we got this. If we got this then, we'll get this now. Instead of saying thoughts and prayers, say the thing. Give us all real things to say. One of my favorite memories is, one of my best souvenirs is, I will never forget the time we. A prayer is hope. Instead of praying that it will resolve, let's try believing that it is resolving. Not will, is. That every small, separate step we take, thinking, planning, doing, hugging, remembering, cherishing, that is the fuel that we need. That is the connection we need. When we do get back online, the temptation is to say how difficult it was for us, unable. That's the past. Instead of saying, oh, how awful and how terrible it was, focus on what a brilliant miracle it is that we are connecting, that we are here, that we are okay, that there is help. Keep it in the present tense. Focus on all of the good, because cleanup will happen. And if we have to move, we have to move. Believe me, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, humans of all shapes and sizes, every military child has moved against their will more times than you can begin to imagine. And for each small military child, it felt as devastating in their heart and their soul and their energy and their mind, in their grasp of normal and reality. It was as devastating for them as yours is today. And at the time, for us, for the military kids, it was the worst that could happen. And then we reached the other place and we had to unpack and we couldn't find our socks and we had the new school. We had to figure out how to get to the new school and from the new school and where's my locker. And dad has a new job and mom has a new job and my sister has a new job and so-and-so's got a boyfriend. Because we're rebuilding our lives over and over and over. And it's not devastating in the big picture. They're relocating manpower and materials to do the job, and the family goes along. In the bigger picture, a mile away, a block away, several stories away, it's not a disaster. It is a step in a process. Only for us in that moment, it feels like the worst that could happen. And yet here we are. Do we have some scars? Yes. I still have a scar where a surfboard fell out of the sky and hit me in the leg. Granted, I thought I could catch it. Granted, I was standing under it. Granted, I was part of the problem. But I do have the scar. And it becomes a story. What we do not need to do to each other and to ourselves is stay focused in the negativity. If we're exhausted, reasonable. If we were terrified, reasonable. If we are still alive and well, miracle. If our technology still works to some degree, miracle. If there is a place we can go for shelter and food, miracle. If there are people there that we can hug because, oh my God, you made it too, miracle. The worst that can happen is defined by our perception of the event. Yes, if the house is gone, that's an issue. Is it the worst that can happen? I don't know. How about a volcanic eruption? If we focus on, and I don't mean to be a Pollyanna, I'm focusing on what can I do now? I am here. Where do I need to go? What can I do now? Let me make a list. Let me pause for a moment and give myself the fuel I need, and let me make a list and let me tackle it one at a time. And every so often, call out to somebody and say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are we doing? And let them tell you. See you for the break. It is only devastating to humans if that is what we choose to focus on. Is it a restart? Yeah. Did we plan? Maybe not enough. Did we plan too much and the storm avoided us? Miracle. Do the best to get out of the complaining. It's a stalling tactic. It accomplishes nothing. And it's fear-based. It gives you a tight feeling in your stomach. So I know this was heavy today. And sometimes we have to do that. Instead of thinking of happily ever after, what I want us to do is figure out a small pocket somewhere, some small pocket where we can keep happily now, happily ever here. And every time we need to dip into it, it's here. We don't have to wait for whatever that event is to wait to be happy after that. We can just reach and be happy now. And if somebody says, what are you doing? I'm reaching for happy. Abby told me to. What is wrong with that woman? You watched the show. You tuned in. You're part of the problem. And you're also part of my solution. It means everything that you are doing these videos with me. I say this every time. Last video Tuesday, we had over 400 people watch it. Just amazing that you took the time to check in and be part of it. Every time the numbers are growing gradually, slowly inching up. It's wonderful. It means that the tribe is building. We're going to need more boats for the flotilla. It's awesome. And it's because you're making a decision that this has value for you, that being part of this has value for you. It gives you a sense of connection. It gives you a sense of saying, you know, she's not wrong. She has a point. Perhaps I will look at it from that perspective. And then when you stub your toe, you say, for God's sake, Abby. That's life. So when you're talking to people who have been through something, be specific. That's in prayers. Don't do that. I'm thinking about you, not I was thinking about you, or I will be thinking about you. I am thinking about you. I am thinking about you. I am thinking of all the amazing things you are and mean to me. And I am lucky that you're here. Prayers, yeah, lots of prayers. Other times, though, we're busy now. Please help me do this. Okay. Take a deep breath. Let it out. Shrug your shoulders. You know the exercises. That's the help that is being sent to you. Prepare yourself. Breathe, eat, rest. I thought you were going to help me. I am helping. I'm reminding you. I'm helping you be strong. I'm helping you be strong too. Because when you're strong, you help me. Okay? So next time, new things to talk about. Very exciting. I have this wonderful book project that has fallen into my lap, and it's really exciting. It's going to be part of a trilogy of books, and 2 of them were made into films. So yes, this is my independent film. This is my indie filmmaker guy, and so we want to have the multi-platform way of loving his stories. So that's begun. We're doing that. We're doing the cleanup on that. It's not a disaster. We're doing the cleanup on that, designing the cover. We're having a lot of fun with that conversation. And that's going to be happening. It's evolving now, and we have our fingers and toes crossed about getting at least some sample copies printed in time for the gifting season. Challenge, of course, the irony of ironies. There are 2 major printing unit areas in the States where most of these independent publishing houses send their work. One is in North Carolina and the other one is in Northern California. It's a curious thing about paper. It has issues with fire and water. You either have no book or you have book. And so I thought it was a novel. Well, it was, and then it got wet, and now it's a couch. So we're keeping very good positive thoughts about those locations, and a couple of other amazing things. And of course, Pivotry is unfolding as it's supposed to. And I have a really interesting thing to talk to you about that very soon. Not ready yet, very soon. So there's lots of things on in my tiny corner of the world that are keeping me busy and focused. And for you, give yourself permission to say, I'm doing okay. One day at a time, one joy at a time, one miracle at a time, one challenge met at a time. That's how it works. Okay? Be good to you. You deserve it. Hug your loved ones. They deserve it too. Thank you for watching.